Assalamualaikum and hi to our beloved lecturer, Dr. Hazim. Before we start this presentation, I would like to say thank you to Doctor for giving us the opportunity to finish this project along together with the other kids. So for today's presentation, we have chosen a topic named Transportation Preferences to Universiti Pendidikan Sultan Idris, UPSI, among students. Please allow me to introduce the members of the team for today. Where Group 3 consists of 4 members, which is Nishantini, Farah, Hazira and me, Hazani. Population consists of all elements, which is individual, items or objects whose characteristics are being studied, and census is a survey that includes every member of population. While sample is a portion of the population selected for the study, and sample survey is a collection of information from a portion of the population. So instead of census, we took a sample survey for this topic because it would be impossible to do census since it has to include the information of every member of the population, which is UPSI. Students, representative sample is a sample that represents the characteristics of the population as closely as possible. Inferences derived from a representative sample will be more reliable. As we pick a topic related to only UPSI students, so we have to take the information that we need from only UPSI students, not the students from other universities. So that's all from me, and I will pass to the next presenter to explain the next topic.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Nancy Natra and I will present chapter 2, which is organizing and graphing data. In this subtopic, we will learn about frequency distribution, graphical presentation, which is bar graph and pie chart, graphing data and histogram. First, we will learn about frequency distribution. A frequency distribution is the organization of raw data in table form using classes and frequencies. For qualitative data, the frequency distribution commonly known as categorical frequency distribution. The frequency distribution for qualitative data lists all categories and the number of elements that belong to each of them. In this table 2.1, I put frequency distribution of transportation preference to Universiti Pendidikan Sultan Idris among students. Second, we have relative frequency and percentage distribution. The relative frequency show what fractional part or proportion of the total frequency belongs to corresponding category. The relative frequency of a category is obtained by dividing the frequency of that category by the sum of all the frequencies. And at this, I put table 2.2, which is referred to relative frequency and percentage distribution of transportation preference to Universiti Pendidikan Sultan Idris among students. Thirdly, there is a little bit error in this data because there's some mistake in survey. And 2.2, we will learn about graphical presentation. In this topic, we will learn 2 graphical presentation, which is bar graph or bar chart and pie chart. Bar graph, also known as bar chart, is made of bars whose head represent the frequencies of respective categories. Meanwhile, pie chart is a chart that divided into portions that represent that relative frequency of percentage of the population or sample to different categories. I also put bar chart and pie chart example here about transportation preference among students. That's all from me.
Hello, Good Doctor. I'm Nishantini, anak Profesor Kumar Sega,
and today I will be presenting about data description, which we learned in chapter 3. In this chapter, we will be learning on how to calculate the mean, median, mode, variance, and standard deviation. So let's look at our slide. These are the formulas that we will be using to calculate our data on transportation preference JUPSI among our students. Alright, this is the data of total distance taken for students to travel to UPSI from the frequency. We will calculate our cumulative frequency by adding the frequency of the data before. We will add the frequency from the data above. Then to find the class boundary, it's plus minus 0.5 from our data. For example, as what we can see here, our data is 0 to 1, so the class boundary will be negative 0.5 to 1.5. As to calculate the midpoint, we will use our class boundary by adding them together and divide it to 2. Lastly, we need to find the M and F. We will multiply it, midpoint and frequency. Once we get our data in this table, once we completed this data from this table, it will be easier for us to calculate the mean and the other data description. Now we can see here how to calculate the mean. We take the total of midpoint and frequency, the M and F, and divide with total students. So our total students is 39. We have 39 responses for this project. Alright. For the median, we use the formula and fill in the blanks. In that formula, we'll just add in all the values and we'll get our median. And as for the mode, the model class is midpoint of the table with highest frequency. Therefore, the mode for this group of total distance for 39 students is 700.5 kilometers. There are two more tables, which is about total time traveled by students. We will use the same method that we used for the first table to calculate the mean, median, and mode. And this is the calculation. It's the same method. I just did for 3 tables. We did for total distance, total cost, and total time traveled. So we are going to use the same method to calculate all these 3 tables. We do a table, we already get the values, and then we use the formula to get the answers. Alright, so this is the same goes to the third table, which is about total cost spent per student for the transportation. And here is the calculation. Alright, so now we are going to calculate the variance and standard deviation. We are going to use the same table that we used to calculate mean, median, and mode. But as what you can see here, that's a slightly different. The pink column, we will add one more column, which is M square F. M square F, as what we can see in the total distance table. Once we get our data, we can use the formula to fill up the information and get the value for variance. As what we saw before, the formula for variance, we're just going to take the formula, we use the data from the table, and we'll get the variance. As for standard deviation, we will square root the value of variance, because variance, the value of variance, when we square root it, we will get standard deviation. Alright, so we will be using the same step for table about time travel. This is the table, and this is the calculation. As you can see, we add a new column, and then we use the same formula to calculate the variance and the standard deviation. And this is the table for total cost. As you can see, we add a new column, the pink color, which is M square F. And this is the calculation. So I hope, Doctor, you have met your interpretation from my explanation, and I hope whoever sees this video understands on how to calculate mean, median, mode, variance, and standard deviation. That's all my explanation about data description, and now I will pass it to Farah, the next presenter. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Assalamualaikum and hello, my name is Nufala Najwa and I will be presenting about probability and probability distribution for transportation reference to UPSI among students. Probability is chapter 4 that we learn in elementary statistics SMS 1024. For this section, we want to know what is marginal probability, conditional probability for transportation preference among students. We also want to know, does this event have intersection and what is the union of these events? So let's find out. Based on the data that we collected, the total respondents for our Google form is 39%. However, the results shown that there are 64 transportation that they use because the respondents may choose at least one transportation. The highest data among all transportation that they use are cars with 26 response, while the lowest data are both motorcycle and walk with 1 response. Next slide, marginal probability, where we consider only one event without the others. For our title, there are 8 marginal probabilities. Number 1, probability of male. We have to divide 7 respondents of male by the total of all respondents, which is 39. We will get 0.18. Meanwhile, probability of female is 0.82 because of 32 female respondents divided by 39 respondents. For probability of car, we will divide 26, which is the total of students that use car to go to UPSI, by 64, which is total of transportation that respondents use. We will get 0.41. This way are also used to calculate other transportation probability. Now we go to 4.2 conditional probability, where an event will happen given that another event has already happened. For example, find the probability of cars given the respondents are male. To find it, number of males who use cars divide by total number of males. So the conditional probability of it is 5/7 or 0.71. For another example, to find the probability of bus given that the respondents are female, divide 13 female who use bus by 32 for all female respondents. We will get 0.41. That is the method to calculate conditional probability. Use this method to calculate other conditional probability. In addition, these events also have the intersection. To determine the intersection of these events, we use the Venn diagram as you can see in our slide. Based on the diagram given, there are 3 transportation that male and female students use to go to UPSI, which is cars, bus, and aeroplane. However, motorcycle and walk are only used by some female respondents. This shows that there are non-male respondents that use motorcycle and walk as their transportation to go to UPSI. To the next slide, which is 4.4, union of events. To find the union of events, we use addition rule. The formula of addition rule is probability of event A add with the probability of event B and subtract it with the probability of event A and B. For example, find the probability that one female student selected at random from these 39 students go to UPSI using aeroplane. Probability of female students plus probability of aeroplane and subtract it with the probability of female and aeroplane. That's how you calculated the union of events. So 32/39 plus with 6/64 and subtract it with 64/64. The answer we will get is 0.852. Furthermore, we go to slide 5.1, which is from chapter 5, binomial probability distribution. To calculate the binomial probability, determine the value of n, x, p, and q, and use the formula given in the slide. For example, find the probability that exactly 5 male in the sample go to UPSI using cars. The value of n is 7, which is total of male students, x for 5 male students that stated in the question, p for probability that male students use cars, which is 0.71, while q are against of p, which is 0.29. So, use the formula given and the answer that you will get is 0.3186. This formula will be used in other questions that are related to binomial. Last but not least, Poisson probability. The formula of it is lambda power of x times with e power of negative lambda divided by x factorial. For instance, on average, the time taken to go to UPSI using a transportation is 6.2 hours per day. Using the Poisson probability distribution formula or the table of Poisson probability, find the probability that on the other day, the time taken to go to UPSI will be exactly 4. So we use the formula given and determine the value of lambda and x. After done determine and calculate, we will get 0.1249. This formula will be used in other questions related to Poisson probability. Now, I will pass the slide to the next presenter, which she will be conclude our title today.
As the last presenter for today, I will explain the conclusion part. So, from the data that we got, the pie chart and the bar graph that we have sketched, we can conclude that most of the students from UPSI go to their classes by a car, which they call it as private here. The thing is, we have a Telegram group where the students can look for their private by sending to the group from and where they want to go, and it has its own chart based on how many people join the private and how long the journey is. Then followed by bus, where we can see UPSI has its own few buses to take the students to their desired places, not only within UPSI and also the outside of UPSI. The least preference of the students is by walking. Other than that, we also have collected the other types of data, which is total distance from home to UPSI, total cost used for transportation, and total time travel. So that's all from me. Thank you.